All right, well, it is 11 o'clock, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. Thank y'all for joining us for the EDDMapS office hours. This is something we started after the EDDMapS Summit last spring, and we do these monthly on the third Friday of the month. And the past ones are all recorded and on YouTube. And we will have this one up this afternoon on the EDDMapS training page, as well as we'll get a link up for the next one that we'll be doing in October. And the next EDDMapS office hours is going to be focused on bulk data and how to send bulk data and best practices. And so Rebecca Wallace, who's on with me today, who's the EDDMapS coordinator, is going to do that one in October. So I'm Chuck Bardron. I'm director of the University of Georgia Center for Invasive Species and Ecosystem Health, where the EDDMapS program is run out of. And today we're going to talk about smartphone apps, and I'm going to talk about how we got where we are today, and why ultimately you should start using the EDDMapS app or the EDDMapS Pro app versus some of the regional apps that many of you may be familiar with. So so let's get into it. So I like to tell this big story when I talk about smartphone apps, and because I think that for us in the invasive species and even natural resource community, we didn't realize when the iPhone was introduced and the Android phones were first introduced how useful of tool a smartphone could be. And I think that was because when the smartphone was introduced, it was introduced as, this combination device that you could have as your phone, as your music player, and as your internet communicator. And what we quickly found out was what was really nice about the smartphones for us in invasive species or in natural resource or agriculture in general, that what it also provided us was that camera that we always had with us, so we could document new things or unusual things we saw. We had a notepad that we could always keep with us within our phone. We had field guides that we could always keep with us. And then we also had the GPS and the mapping interface, both to help us get places and to use for applications like EDDMapS. And that made things a lot easier than when this was how we had to collect data. No longer hauling around a camera and a GPS and filling out a paper form and then going back into the office and transcribing that into a computer. So we started out in 2010, 2011, and built the first smartphone app that came out of EDDMapS and reporting, and it was focused on the Python issue in Florida. But instead of just making a Python reporting app, we made an app that you could report all invasive animals and plants in Florida. And the I've got one, the name came because the telephone number that you use to call to report pythons or other exotic animals in Florida was 188 I've got one. And so we took that, created a website and the first smartphone app after that. And what happened was, once we figured out how to do it and ultimately got different programmers on staff to do the programming, we realized that there was a lot of opportunities out there for people to create, for us to create these tools working with different partners. And so we ended up creating more than a screen full of apps focused on different parts of the country, so you could have your field guide specific in the species specific to where you live, and not have to worry about having something that was huge and larger than some of the games or other apps on your phone, because it had thousands of species with pictures and descriptions. And so we were able to create these different apps and get those out there for folks. And here are some of the primary ones. The Great Lakes Early Detection Network, Southeast and Mid-Atlantic Early Detection Network, the EDDMapS West app, and the Outsmart Invasives app, and that kind of covered the New England part of the country. And we even worked with some partners. Texas Invaders is a great example of where we worked with them to create an app that would get the data would feed directly into their database in Texas. And so, you know, what kind of became out of this was, okay, we have all these regional apps, they're branded differently. The code is very similar between them, but when we add a new feature, we have to add a new feature to all of them in order for that to be available. And so that's when we started thinking about how could we do this better. And it also became a problem where, you know, we couldn't develop things like stickers and have a generic sticker that anybody could any of our partners could use, because, you know, the app was EDDMapS West or the app was Glendon or something else. So, you know, from both the marketing and a way to be able to get new features to the apps and to more users quickly, we started thinking about other ways to do apps. The apps have been very successful, especially thinking about the niche of what we're talking about with invasive species reporting primarily. You know, over 500,000 downloads for the iPhone now, and about 100,000 for the Android. And what's interesting, and I'll show you that, is it seems that iPhone users, iPad users download more apps, but the amount of data coming into EDDMapS seems to be about the same for iPhone users or Android users. And so, yeah, here's that for the last year. We are still getting about 50% of the reports into EDDMapS through web reports, but then the iPhone makes up about 16% and the Android makes up about 10%, you know, over the last 12 months. I also wanted to look at downloads, knowing that the EDDMapS app and EDDMapS Pro are two of the newer apps, and how their downloads are kind of comparing to the regional apps. And we're seeing an uptick in those apps, and as we've promoted them more and worked with partners to promote them as well. The I've Got One app still has got more downloads, but that's just because it was the first one and because of the a lot of interest in invasive species in Florida. And here are the other apps. Just to kind of look at a snapshot of what the downloads look like for those. Great Lakes Early Detection app covers a big area, and there's been a lot of promotion for that one, as well as some of the new invasives in Washington has helped make that, you know, app be downloaded a fair number of times. But I wanted to look and see what our trends were showing us. And so it was really interesting looking at data just for 2022 and where the data is coming from. And in EDDMapS Pro, which would make sense because that's more for the professional audience, is where most of our new reports are coming in from. But then the EDDMapS app is in second now. And so I think that's moving us in the right direction, but I kind of wanted to tell you why we're moving in that direction and what some of the new features of the app, of the new apps are if you've not used them. And so what we're trying to do as we continue to build EDDMapS. EDDMapS is about 17 years old now in terms of how long we've been working on this and building different pieces. And so what we found is we need to cater the tools for the different audiences. And so for our casual users who know a little bit about invasive species, who need a field guide, and who, you know, are not going to be reporting hundreds of records every day. That's where the EDDMapS app really fits that niche. Usually somebody's going to have some kind of training and know a little bit about invasive species, and then, hey, here's the app to do that. Looking at the general public, that's more of where the I've Got One app has been focused in Florida, and we're looking at ways maybe to expand that beyond Florida. And then the Wild Spotter app, which I'm not going to really cover today, but we'll cover in a future date, is kind of that location based. You know, here's a wild place that you care about. What can you report on that place? But again, more focused on the public. And then for the more professionals who are doing this every day, collecting a lot of data, who need that quick, you know, interface to report things, that's where the EDDMapS Pro app comes in, and that's what I'm going to kind of go into over the next few minutes. One thing I want to definitely point out is the EDDMapS training page. We have made a lot of different videos for how to use these different apps. And so I really, you know, between the resources for the last 2 summits, as well as the videos that have been created, I want to make sure that you're aware of that and you go to that page. I'm going to talk about the apps fairly quickly today and just give an overview, and then we'll open up things for questions. One thing I do want to stress, because it's one of these things that really helps us out a lot. If you are an iPhone user and the app crashes on your phone, if you do not have the setting that I'm fixing to show you how to set turned on, then we do not get that crash report. And so if there is a bug in the app and you don't have that turned on, then we don't have a way of knowing about it. So if you go into settings on your iPhone or iPad, go down to the scroll down to the privacy and security section. And then once you get under privacy and security, you scroll down to the analytics and improvement section. I know this is kind of in there, but then under that, there's an option to share with app developers. And this option is something that when you first turn your phone on, that very first time you set up, it asked you this question: do you want to share things with the developers? And if you don't say yes, then it stays turned off forever. So I would like to recommend, you know, all we get is the crash reports, and it helps us to know, okay, hey, here's what they did that caused the app to crash, and us to be able to fix that bug in future versions. All right, so let's start with the EDDMapS app. I'm gonna spend a few minutes on it, and then I'll talk about EDDMapS Pro. The EDDMapS app is, you know, ultimately going to replace these regional apps. When you open it up, it asks you what state or Canadian province you're in, and then it downloads a field guide specific to that state or province. And so we were able to solve the problem of having the regional focus on the apps by, you know, you setting this up at the beginning. And you know, yes, you may travel to nearby states, but a lot of times the species lists are the same or very similar. So that doesn't, you know, doesn't limit you to just reporting in the state that you chose. It also allows states or areas to have, you know, customized information if they want to. It allows you to build your My List, which has been a feature of a lot of the apps, but this now syncs back with the server, so you can build that list of species that you're comfortable with on the website or within the app. It also allows you to search for species that are not in the app. That hits our database and it says, you know, give me the ID number for that species, and then it allows you to report a species that's not included as part of the app. So I'm going to quickly go through the highlights of the app, just show you some examples. When you open the app, it shows you kind of an introduction to what EDDMapS is. You download your field guide. You've got this sidebar where you can have, change your state. You can log into EDDMapS or create your account. You can change different settings. Like I said, you can register directly in the app. And then on the home screen, what we've really tried to do to eliminate some of the confusion we had in the past apps was separate the reporting a new observation or a negative survey and the species information. So it's very clear, okay, I'm reporting something or I'm looking for information on something. So if you go to report something, it's the same form that you're used to if you've been using the older apps. Again, you're able to choose your location, upload multiple pictures, and put in some basic information about the species. You can take new pictures or upload pictures from your gallery. The app now also gives you the option to save the pictures to your camera roll as well. So they're not just on EDDMapS. You can have them as part of your camera roll. Like all the apps have had for a while, you can enter data as points, or you can draw a polygon within the app. And here's just an example of different ways to draw the polygon. And then, the rest of the information, if it's a plant, is, was it positive? Did you treat it when you saw it? Was it negative? And then, how large was the infestation and how dense was it? All the data is saved to the queue, and then you have to go upload the queue. And so we've done that so the apps work just as well offline, if you're somewhere that you don't have cellular service as if you do have cellular service. And here's quickly how, it shows up in the queue. You select them and then hit the upload button up at the top to submit these. And this presentation, the how to use EDDMapS presentation, is available on that training tools. I'm just using it to kind of highlight some things. Species information, you can go in, you can sort them by scientific name or by common name, and then you can click on the species. You can report it from this page, or you can look at images or a distribution map of the species. And just an example of the pictures or the distribution map. And then I mentioned the My Species list as a way for you to, add species that you want to be able to quickly report. And then, that list shows up as one of the categories when you go to select the picture. It also shows you things you've recently reported. So if there's something you're reporting a lot of, then you can go in when you're doing a new report and click on recent species. The final thing is the settings, that save report photos to gallery option that I mentioned. And then you can, we're adding in reminders just to make sure people do not, get a bunch of records in their queue and forget to upload them. And that seems to be a kind of a universal problem with apps that have queues. And so we just want to make sure that you don't forget about them. And then you can always provide us feedback. The nice thing about the feedback option is it tells us what version of the app you're running, what version of the operating system you're running, and what kind of phone you have. That's added to the email automatically. And so that helps us to narrow down problems on our end. And this is something you can do from the Android or the iPhone version. And it does not require that analytics to be turned on, but the analytics being turned on sends us the actual crash reports. From all the apps, you have the option to report an unknown or an unlisted species. And that's something to remember when something is not listed, or maybe you don't know what it is, but it looks like it could be something that was a problem. All right, so shifting to EDDMapS Pro. EDDMapS Pro, first and foremost, does not include the field guide. We just left that out completely. And what it is really, was originally built for was to be able to do revisits of existing data. And so I'm going to show you some examples of that, as well as some of these other things. To be able to do a revisit, you had to have the existing data on your phone. So you're able to download the data either as a county package, or you're able to go onto the website, do an advanced query, save that query, and then download all that data. So that's one of those things that's, if you're doing a project and you're looking at all of Japanese knotweed in Minnesota, and you don't want to have to go download every county data set for Minnesota, you just want to go in and just download one data set that has all the data in it. That's where the custom data queries become very useful. Some other things, verifiers can review records in the app, and that's something that is very helpful if you're going out in the field a lot looking for unverified records. So like I said, revisits, going in and changing what the data looks like. You know, you went back, you treated it, you went back, it was eradicated. Being able to mark those populations and then ultimately change the color of the data on the map and be able to you know, keep the map updated and what's going on in the area you're responsible for. To start off with EDDMapS Pro, you really need to not only have an EDDMapS account, but you need to go onto the website and set up the counties that you're interested in, and then set up your species list. And so I always recommend those being two things that you do at the beginning when you're using EDDMapS Pro. EDDMapS Pro, we added a feature where you can download offline maps. Those are very available as the aerial maps, or as an OpenStreetMap, kind of a grayscale map, so you can see that. You can see the roads, you can see some of that information. The reason we have two options is so you can get a little bit more detail on the offline street maps than what you can get from the aerial photography, just because of the size of the packages for larger counties. Something that I think is a really neat feature is photo projects, and I'm going to show you quickly how that works. You go into the photo projects section in the app, you hit the plus button up at the top, and you create a new folder kind of for the photo project that you're working in. And then you can add a photo point, and then after you add the photo point, you can add photos to that photo point. And this is where it gets really cool. So you went out and you're working in an area and you create some photos, and you want to go back and look at them and be able to take the same picture at the same location. And so that's what this lets you do. It lets you have, you know, transparent the original picture, so then you can line the camera up and get a picture to show the same location at a different point in time. And so if you're doing presentations and things through you know, putting together reports, this could be very useful for different projects that you're doing. They have to be portrait on iPhone, but that actually works out pretty good if you're showing before and after pictures in a PowerPoint file. Another thing is KML underlays, or project areas they're called now. This is where you can upload a KML of the area you're working in, and be able to pull that up and show it on a map, and show you know, just to kind of get an idea of where the area is. And those can be, you know, there's a little bit of a limit on the size of the KMLs you can upload, but that's from the website. But this can be a very useful tool for being able to kind of underlay that data on the map. Some other cool stuff in EDDMapS Pro, you have the option to get directions to the record locations. So, you know, when you're viewing the details of the record, if you're trying to find that record, then you can click on it and it will take you to, you know, open up the coordinates in Google Maps or Apple Maps, and it will navigate you there. And then you can go back into EDDMapS Pro and click on the record and update it. You also can contest a record. If you're out in the field and you're not a verifier and you see a record that, hey, something doesn't look right on this, then you can contest it. It'll ask you for the reason that you're contesting it, and then that will send it back to the verifier, so they have to look at it again and go, okay, well, yeah, maybe this was a something else. And so very useful tool if you're trying to help with management. So in the middle here is what it looks like when you open up the app. Your little plus button down here is where you go to add new records. But then you have this hamburger choice on this side, which takes you over here to the different options and where you can do the photo projects, download the data sets, download the offline maps, download the project areas. And then once you're in the map and you have all that set up, then you can turn on and off the aerial maps, the road maps, determine what you're displaying, whether it's your county records or a custom record set, and then look at photo projects or monitoring zones. You also can do filters for all this data. One other thing that we added is if you know the object ID of a record and you're trying to find that record, you can now type that into the search box and it will jump you directly to that object ID. So if you kind of know the record ID, but you can't find it in the app, that's a way to get there. Something we added in the last year is the concept of monitoring zones. What came up was spotted lanternfly, and you want to go out and you want to do revisits to Tree of Heaven, but you want to check to see if Tree of Heaven was there, but also whether or not there was spotted lanternfly. And so we built a way where you can set up a project, go in, select the different areas you want to monitor, assign those to users, and then the user goes in through the app, downloads that data set. They show up as different color points on the map, and then they get a two-part form that you can control. So first of all, is Tree of Heaven still there? Yes or no. And so do a revisit to the Tree of Heaven. And then did you see spotted lanternfly? Yes or no. And then so this creates that new spotted lanternfly, either positive or negative report in the database, sends it to the proper people. It allows you to do it all as one action instead of having to drop a point and create a new report. So I think this is a very useful tool, and we're just scratching the surface on the different ways it can be used. And finally, with EDDMapS Pro, we've added as much help information as we can possibly provide. There's a key directly on the map of what the different colors and points mean. And then every page has this informational window where you can see, what all the things mean on the page. And this is something we're going to be integrating into the EDDMapS app as well. So that's EDDMapS, that's EDDMapS Pro. I mentioned WildSpotter. This is a project we've been working on for a few years now, initially with the Forest Service to, do focused outreach around invasive species in different national forests and then other places as well. So if you're with a state agency that manages land and are interested in talking to us about WildSpotter, please do, because we would love to get more groups involved and engaged on this. And then finally, in the next week or so, we're going to be releasing a new version of I've Got One. This is going to include a new I've Got One website, as well as a new I've Got One app. And so just kind of doing a little bit of a different focus where you've got your field guide on the home screen. You've got a plus button down here where you can easily do a new report. And then adding some kind of almost gamification type things in it, but just informational, where you can explore all the data nearby you. You can explore, what the top species reported nearby you are, and then also what's been reported recently. And so being able to, go in and explore that data and see, hey, what else is other people reporting near me and what's been reported recently. And so that's just a first of many different things we're planning on adding to the I've Got One app, just to make it more you know, user friendly and that real introductory user that maybe doesn't know that much about invasive species at this point. So we've been kind of on this roadmap. COVID obviously changes things, so and has slowed down things in a little bit of ways, but you know, we're at the point where, you know, we've got EDDMapS the Canadian part of EDDMapS is part of EDDMapS now, and their apps are integrated into the main EDDMapS app. We've got a lot of the information, the EDDMapS educational information up on the website. And so now we're looking at next things we can do to the app, adding more gamification features, adding a way for you to walk a polygon. That's something that we're going to be adding soon, that people have asked for a while, and just making that very easy to be able to go out and say, hey, I want to walk this instead of draw it, and it keeps, you know, your path, and then you can do slight edits to the polygons in the app. And I want to thank the team here that makes all of this happen. Joe LaForest, Rebecca Wallace, and Selena McAllister, as well as our top-notch smartphone programmers, Jordan Daniel, who handles the iPhone side of things, and then Kunal Patel, who handles the Android side of things, and then Bilal Bush and Saad Asari, they handle the web sides of things and making sure all that works. And then Tristan and Michaela are helping out me and Rebecca and Joe on different educational materials and different ways we can make and improve the apps. And then Sarah Jean Swain's our communications coordinator. So that's what I wanted to talk about. And now we'll open it up. I think there's a couple of questions in the chat already that I'll take a look at, and please continue to add questions to the Q&A, and we'll answer those about the EDDMapS apps or about other things related to EDDMapS. So the first question is there a way to show your present location while in the field using the revisit feature? It'd be great to be clear that your revisit is in fact the exact location without using a separate GPS or tools. So when you are in EDDMapS Pro and you're doing a revisit, then that takes the GPS location of where you currently are with that record, and then adds that information in. So it is your exact location, and it's tied to the original record, but you can also move that location if you need to. And the next question is, one more step is needed for management. Identify locations that have been revisit based on a defined criteria. This is different from simply revisiting a location and updating the status, because they tell you which locations need to be revisited, so you can plan your future work. Is there any way to accomplish this? So there has been some work along that route. There was a program called SIPA, and I'm never going to remember what it stands for, but it is currently being used to do a part of that, where you go into the SIPA tool, and the state of Utah has implemented this, and they're using it both to rank their grants, which is a little bit different than you know, an individual using it. But when it was first developed and used in Florida, the plan was the goal of it was to do exactly this, Daniel. It was to be able to take your data, put the factors that you want to use to determine whether or not you know, what your priorities are, whether species based or habitat based. Enter all that into this ArcGIS model, then the ArcGIS model runs and gives you back that information. And so that is something that I'm not sure that the web tool is still available generally, but you can download the ArcGIS model, and we're looking at some different ways to be able to better include this and support that concept of really using a model to figure out where you should be treating and what the best places that you should be treating. So if you want to reach out to, I can provide you more information and some links to look at that better. All right, other questions?
I occasionally get emails from people that they want to be able to add subjects to be reportable in their states. And a lot of times we can add these subjects. Every now and then we check with our partners. So Chuck has talked before about some of the different partners we work with, especially in different state-based either agencies or organizations. And so these partners help fund the maintenance and adding of new features to EDDMapS and the EDDMapS tools. And so occasionally, because of the focus of the partnership, we won't add certain species to be reportable, even if they are introduced. These partners are the ones that are often managing these species and doing the review process of these species. So I just wanted to say we can add species if there's something that isn't currently reportable. In most cases, we can add that as a reportable subject to your state. So if there's something you've been wanting to report, but it's not reportable, you can be sure just reach out to us and we will do our best to add it as reportable to the EDDMapS app. Now with EDDMapS Pro, that is a subject list that you create yourself. So you can go into the My List for EDDMapS Pro and add almost any species you want to add to be reportable. But I just wanted to cover that concept because occasionally, like I said, we do get the questions about adding subjects. And in most cases, we can very easily add them. And Chuck, did you show where the training materials are for EDDMapS Pro and all that?
Yeah, I showed the page, but I guess I didn't tell everybody where it is. I mean, if you go to EDDMapS and then across the top bar, there's one of the options is tools and training, and you click on that, and then under that is the tools page and the training page. And so you can click on the training page to go directly to all these resources, as well as the recording of today's presentation once we get it uploaded.
Yeah, and occasionally, because our programmers are constantly developing, some of the training materials might be slightly behind some of the new features added or some of the updates that have happened. But for the most part, they're going to be highly accurate to what your experience will be with the apps. And if you ever have any questions about anything, you can email us or call us, or and for right now, ask any questions you have, and we'll be more than happy to walk you through some of the different steps and procedures. We also are more than happy to work with individual groups. So it is common that I'll give a presentation, or Chuck will give a presentation to individual, local, regional groups about these tools and answer any questions, and help people get comfortable with these tools so that they can use them. So it's not you're not limited necessarily to the walkthroughs and videos we have online. We can do kind of us presenting to a very specific group to help get you on board onto these different tools.
You can give it a few more minutes and see if anybody else has any questions. You can raise your hand too, and we can get you to ask the question, or we will hey, give you 20 minutes of your day back.
So, and you know, we do have partnerships in several states or with groups in some of these some states. So if your state is not one that has worked with us in the past, we're more than happy to work with individual groups within a state to help get your state or your group working with our tools. And everything mostly that Chuck talked about today is free to use. I think the SIPA tool is the only thing that you briefly talked about that isn't 100% free to use. So that's a question we get sometimes is, how much does it cost to use EDDMapS Pro compared to EDDMapS? Well, it's still free. It's still free to use. And so you don't have to worry about anything like that. It's just that the features offered in EDDMapS Pro are typically for a more professional user than the features available in the EDDMapS app.
And also, if you know, feel free to reach out to us if there are topics you would like for us to cover with these future office hours. So thanks everyone. Like I said, next month, Rebecca is going to talk about bulk data and better ways to prepare your data so when it gets to her, it goes in quicker. So
I'll be talking generally as well about quality assurance, quality controls we have in EDDMapS as well. So things that help data come in as standardized and formatted as possible and come out of our system to you guys who are requesting use of this data to be, you know, as clean as possible.
So thank y'all very much for joining us. Oh, wait, we got another question just as I was about to. Yes, so EDDMapS Pro, EDDMapS, WildSpotter, I've got one, as well as all the current regional apps, except for I guess the Texas one that I mentioned. All feed directly into the EDDMapS website. You have to go on to the EDDMapS website to manage your tool, to manage your records, and then the verifier network that we have over 900 verifiers that you know, work in different areas to review the records and make them available. And so but yes, all the data is fed into one database. Is just, we're trying to make tools that make it as easy as possible for different user groups to get the information in.
And there are some very, very specific projects that also will feed into the EDDMapS database when through the report form on those particular websites. So we work with a number of working groups that have a very sometimes single species focus. So if you've heard of rose-rosette disease, the rose-rosette disease working group has a form on their website, and the reports that go through that form come into the EDDMapS database, and that allows for the people working on this particular disease to get all of the data coming in through various ways into one database, which is the EDDMapS database. So the majority of the people we work with are going to be using the EDDMapS kind of branded products, but those very specific working groups will have their own website with their own, you know, form.
Well, good deal. Well, thank y'all for joining us. And if you have more questions, feel free to reach out to me or Rebecca, and we'll be glad to answer those. Have a good day.